Hi everyone, my name is Marissa and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
And I'm Dara, and my pronouns are she, her, hers as well.
So for today, for the workshop, we're going to be introducing some topics related to mindfulness and just being more present in your everyday life. And then as you can see here, we also have an activity that we're going to do with you. So we hope this video helps you learn a little bit more about identifying and accepting your emotions, being more mindful when connecting in nature, and also how your values can help you live a more intentional life. We also want you to just be able to reflect on your own experiences and be able to kind of notice where you might want to change some things in your life to help you be a little bit more mindful. So just to start off this workshop, we want you to think about a time when you felt like you were, just kind of going through the motions. You weren't as mindful as you could have been. And you can either reflect on this individually. You can just think about it within your mind. You can journal about times when you weren't as mindful, or you can just discuss with people around you, with people in your home, or with friends or family.
So some examples of maybe times when we weren't feeling so mindful. I guess for me, sometimes I'll rush in the morning to get out to class or work, and I'll forget I'll be driving down the road, and then I forget if I shut the stove off or if I close the garage door. So just sort of those moments when you forget what you've done can mean that your mind is already 10 steps ahead of you and you're not quite living in the present moment.
Yeah, a lot of times for me, I feel like I'm always rushing through my meals and I'm not really being mindful when I'm eating. I'm always trying to multitask or eating on the go while I'm driving to work or to class. So really just making sure that I'm, just sitting down and eating and making sure that I'm being aware of what I'm tasting and just eating more slow. And just kind of being able to remember what I ate for breakfast this morning. That's how I know I would have been more mindful. So another thing that we want you to think about when you're thinking about when you were trying to be more mindful is how you could have been able to be more mindful in that moment. So for example, when you're eating, how can you be more mindful while you're eating? So making sure that you're paying attention to what you're doing. You're not multitasking, kind of what I was experiencing. Other ways where you could know when you want to be a little bit more mindful is when you're just constantly on autopilot, when you're just driving and you're forgetting to, or you're just not really being aware of where you're going. And you're just kind of driving home. And ways to kind of help with that is maybe taking a different route home, and maybe this just being able to see different scenery and paying attention to new surroundings, instead of just taking the same way home every single day. Something else could be you don't understand why you are feeling a certain way. You just feel in your bad mood, but you're not really aware of what exact emotion that you're feeling. So one thing that we will go into this workshop is being able to identify and acknowledge your emotions.
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk and hype these days about mindfulness. So just a little bit to explain what we're talking about here. Mindfulness is something that helps us live a meaningful life, and it's a way for us to kind of intentionally tap into what's happening, and it allows us to kind of take control and live the kind of life we want and be the type of person we want to be. So when we say mindfulness, what we mean is basically a set of skills that will allow us to experience a present moment in a more open, curious, and non-judgmental way. So it's I think the key words are curious, kindness, flexible, and open. And it's practicing using those sort of lenses to our inward experiences as a way to understand what's happening and just kind of play this unbiased observer of our own experiences. So it's really a way to connect with ourselves, and ultimately that will help us connect with others. And really a good way to think of it might be to be an attention process, not a thinking process. So mindfulness is not about controlling your thoughts, and it is separate from the more traditional meditation. This is more of just a way of like focusing our attention to the present moment in a way that's useful. So instead of getting stuck in our thoughts, being really forward thinking or really backwards thinking and kind of ruminating or getting stuck in unhelpful patterns, the skills that we bring up today will help us kind of snap out of that, tune into the moment, and really give us that flexible attention so we can be in control of what we are focusing on. So it's a lot about noticing our inner experiences. So it's about paying attention to our experiences rather than getting caught up in them. Again, curiosity and openness are the way that we view these experiences to really get that non-judgmental lens. With time, it's been said that attention can become more flexible. Like I said, you can start shifting your focus to what's useful in the moment. So if you're with your family and you keep ruminating on something, maybe you'll notice it'll be more useful to like connect with your family because that's what's happening in the moment. So really starting to parse out what is useful for me to focus on and what is just me getting caught up in thoughts. And then it's really an act of kindness. So it's just holding ourselves like we would someone we love, looking at ourselves with compassion and non-judgmentalness. So a lot of the times we tell people like, how would you say this to a friend? And we would often say it a lot nicer than how we would say it to ourselves. So that's a big part of mindfulness as well, is giving ourselves that kindness and compassion that we would give to others.
So on the topic of mindfulness, we wanted to do the mindfulness rock painting exercise. So we have some, we have rocks and paints that were sent to you from Scare. You can either like pick a rock in your garden or outside or at a park, something that stands out to you, or you can use the rocks or the paint that we have provided. If you do use a rock that you found outside, just make sure to like wash it and let it dry before you do this activity, just to make sure that the paint sticks. And so once the rocks are washed and dry, you can go ahead and decorate the rock as you want, whether it's something in this workshop that inspires you or just something else that you can think of that just allows you to live a little bit more mindfulness in your life. You can paint a word or an image or just a phrase that brings you a sense of calm or strength or safety. You can also use different crafting supplies other than what we provided for you. So like, for example, like I have little stamps that I could use, or you could use like stickers. And you could just paint your rocks and just let it dry, preferably like overnight. And then you can just use these rocks as a reminder to be present and stay grounded. You can put them in your room for decoration, or you can put them in your garden or in your backyard, just to like help you. And we will provide the paint and the rocks for you, and also a set of directions that will help you with the activity. So we're gonna go ahead and start the activity and then just kind of introduce some of the topics to you while we do this activity. So one of the first topics that I wanted to introduce that relates to mindfulness is helping us identify our emotions. So this is a little example feelings wheel. You can find this online if you just Google feelings wheel. And it has a bunch of different emotions. And in the middle, it has like happy, surprised, bad, fearful, angry, disgusted, sad. And then as you can see in the wheel, it kind of spreads out. So there's like different emotions. And then as you you kind of look at the different emotions that come from the different emotions. So like, for example, angry could be let down, humiliated, bitter, mad, aggressive, frustrated, distant, or critical. But then if you go a little level more than that, then you can see like betrayed, resentful, disrespected, etc. So it's important, like when I'm feeling a certain emotion, it can help us identify a more specific emotion that we're feeling. So like sometimes we might just be like, I'm feeling sad today. Like, what does that mean? Like, does that mean that you're feeling hurt? Does that mean that you're feeling lonely? Does that mean that you're feeling embarrassed? So it can kind of help us really identify the emotions that we're feeling and be a little bit more specific about what we're feeling. And another thing that's related to that, which is from dialectical behavioral therapy, is the idea of wise mind. And wise mind is the balance between your emotional mind and your rational mind. So your emotional mind would be, a lot of things on the feeling wheel. So that would be like, when feelings control a person's thoughts and behaviors, and especially like when you're acting out, like when you're feeling anger or when you're feeling sadness, like sometimes that can make you act impulsively and not really think about the consequences of those emotions and how you projected those emotions. And so on the other side, so there's emotional mind and then there's the reasonable mind. And when someone uses their reasonable mind, they approach a situation intellectually. And so when they do that, they plan and make decisions based on fact. And so the importance of wise mind is to be able to balance the two, to balance the rational mind and your emotional mind. And so that's when you are able to recognize and respect your feelings, but also responding to them in a rational manner. For example, like when you're feeling anger, like paying attention that you have anger, but also like not just acting and behaving in a way that your anger is telling you to, but also being able to rationally think of and be able to like mindfully stop and be like, okay, I'm feeling anger. How can I perceive a little bit more mindfully?
Yeah, and I can go into so another helpful tool with accepting our emotions is to think of the 3 A's of acceptance. So that's acknowledging, allowing, and accommodating what our inner experiences are. And so this is not a linear process. You don't need to start at acknowledge and end at accommodate. It's just a helpful way to look at it. And so the first word, acknowledge, that really has to do with just that curiosity piece. So looking inward, if you notice, if you go to your emotion wheel, you're feeling some sort of way, you pick out the word, maybe you're feeling betrayed, and just noticing that and acknowledging it. So just giving it, that time to say like, okay, betrayal is here, and looking at it non-judgmentally, not like, oh, I wish it was gone, because often that's not going to help because it's how you're feeling. So acknowledging that it's here and putting a name to it. Then there's the allowance part. So giving it permission to stay. So that could look like something like saying to yourself, I don't like this feeling, but I'll allow it. Or I don't want this feeling, but I'm going to let it be. And so the allowing it to be rather than pushing it away is important, because oftentimes it's not going to go away. And so just allowing it to be there allows you to move through it. And then the last piece is to accommodate it. And this is probably the most challenging because you're going to be making space for it. And who wants to make space for difficult emotions? But a helpful way to look at it could be to think of a visitor at your house who's not dangerous, just someone maybe you don't like. And so you can open the door, and will you acknowledge that they're there? And then will you allow them to come in? And then the last piece is, will you then accommodate them by giving them a seat or offering them something to drink? So the idea here is the guest is not going to leave your front door because they want to come see you. But maybe there is value to just allowing them in, being with them, but knowing in your heart that this isn't ideal, but rather than ignoring them and pushing them away, making space for them or the emotion and seeing how that works. And so it's really about this adapting to living with difficult emotions. And that's like what I said before, that's what will help it move through your body and eventually go away.
And then one last kind of like topic about that is another idea from dialectical behavioral therapy, which is radical acceptance. And that's when you kind of just stop fighting reality and you just fully accept everything that you're going through. And that's when you can just like stop responding with impulsive or destructive behaviors, for example, like out of anger or sadness. Especially when things, aren't going your way or not going the way that you expect them to, and just letting go of that bitterness and that frustration. And that ultimately is what keeps you in this like cycle of suffering. So just being able to just fully accept everything you're going through and then being able to move on from that. And then the second part of our workshop, we want to introduce just like being able to connect with yourself through nature. So Dara, what would you like to do to connect to nature?
Yeah, connecting to nature is really important to me, especially during times of stress or just ways to relax. I think some of my favorite ways is to just go on walks in like natural areas. So I live right by a canyon. So I really like to go on walks in the morning and just sort of notice what plants are around me and listen to the birds chirping. What about you?
Yeah, for me, I really like to go to the beach, really pay attention to all the smells, just like everything that's going on, and like near the ocean, by the beach, listening to everyone. So I think just like I really like connecting to nature by like, going to the beach, either if it's just like swimming in the ocean or just like laying around in the sand. That's why I can be more mindful, especially when I'm feeling stressed or having a lot of overwhelming emotions. So one thing that we did want to walk you guys through is going on like a mindfulness walk. This can just be like in your neighborhood, or you can go to a park, and anyone can do this. You can do this with your kids, or you can just do this individually. You can do it with your friends, with family members, etc. So the goal of this is to just like bring your mind and your thoughts and your feelings into the present moment, and just noticing using our 5 senses while you're doing this, like a mindfulness walk, or when you're just like outside. You can either just sit outside or you can actually walk. So the first thing you should focus on is your vision. So like, for example, as you leave your home, you immediately notice the bright blue skies, the trees, the empty streets. And as you pay closer attention, you can notice like flowers on the sidewalk or a slight breeze, causing them to kind of tilt. So the first one is your vision. Like, what do you see? The second. second one is hearing. What are you hearing when you're walking outside? You can hear every time the breeze passes, there's leaves rustling in the wind. You could hear a car passing on the street. You could hear birds chirping. You could hear dogs barking. And then the third one is touch. So you can notice the warmth of the sun. You can notice the coolness of the breeze. You can notice your feet walking each step on the pavement. And then the second one,
Keep walking.
and then the fourth one is taste. So you could like drink some cold water and taste the water. If you bring a snack, you can taste the snack that you're eating. You can even, like, if you're drinking your morning coffee, you can just hold the coffee in your mouth for a little bit and really pay attention to how it tastes, how good you feel when you're tasting your coffee in the morning. And then the last one is smell. When the breeze floats by, you can catch the smell of the flowers or the trees. You might notice the smell of freshly cut grass by your neighboring home, or you can smell, the cars, the smell of cars driving by, like gasoline, or if there's any construction, you might smell wood. So just going on a walk and going outside and connecting with nature and just paying attention to the five senses that you're feeling can really help you be a little bit more mindful.
Yeah, kind of like getting out of our heads and being more present to what's going on around us. So it's just a really exciting place, and there's a lot going on. So it really helps kind of take that focus off of ourselves sometimes. And so then the last piece of our workshop will go a little bit into values. And so values are words or actions that help us live a more intentional life. So living in line with our values requires identifying what's important to us and then allowing us to live a more meaningful life. So values help us be the sort of person they want to be. They kind of answer the questions, what do you stand for? What really matters in life to you? And so this ties into mindfulness, because when we do become more present, we start to get a little bit more control over how we want to react in situations or how we want to embrace, moments in our life. And so the important part, after we've identified what's important to us, it's about putting that into action. So mindful action. How can we start living in line with these values? And some examples of values, it could be anything to you, but authenticity, compassion, creativity, fairness, fun, honesty, learning, loyalty, responsibility, security, service, wisdom, stability, self-respect. These are all examples of ways of living. And you can identify one, you can identify five, whatever is useful for you to start getting in touch with what's important. So some values that I've identified in my life that are important, two that I've honed in on are growth and trust. And in times of extreme stress or uncertainty, I kind of sometimes get that ability to be like, okay, this is really hard, but growth is a value of mine, so I'm going to lean into it. Or connection is another one that I often think of. And so if I'm having a hard time, I'll think of the word connection, and then I'll usually reach out to someone I love, or I'll keep engaging in a relationship. What about you, Marissa? What are some values?
I think my biggest value is compassion, and I think I've noticed that I have a lot of compassion for others, but I think the hardest thing that I've had to overcome is like compassion for myself and giving myself grace, and being able to just be okay with where I'm at. So I feel like that's one value that I've been really working on.
Yeah, and that's a really good way to put it. It's something that we're always like working on and working towards. And so you can almost picture it like a compass, and the values or the directional pieces leading us where we want to go. So they're not things that we can cross off a to-do list. Marissa's not compassionate today and that's the end of it. Like It's something that you want to keep working towards. And so it's helpful to distinguish that from goals, because goals are also really important to, be successful and feel like we're achieving the life we also want to live. But goals are more future oriented. So they're things that can be accomplished, things that can be crossed off. Whereas values are more here and now, and they often need to be prioritized. And the key piece here is that we can't control our goals, but we can control our values. So an example that's often thrown out is the idea of wanting to get married versus the idea of being loving. So if you're in a relationship, instead of focusing on this goal of it becoming or ending in marriage, you can focus on the day-to-day, and you can always be loving in that relationship. So it's more focusing on how you want to be rather than what you want to get. And there's a helpful question to help you start thinking maybe about what some of these values are to you.
Yeah, so a helpful question. Just imagine you're in the future 10 years, and just like looking back at your life as it is today and asking yourself these 3 questions. So the first one is, I spend too much time worrying about blank. So just really like reflecting on what you're worrying about. Also, like when you're looking back at the past 10 years, thinking about asking yourself, I did not spend enough time doing things such as blank. So like, for example, 10 years ago, I wish I would have been a little bit more compassionate towards myself. And then the last question is, if I could go back in time, what I do differently is blank. So kind of asking yourself what you would change if you go back 10 years in the past.
Yeah, and I think that once you start maybe identifying some values that are important to you, whether individually or with your family or as a culture for yourself, like they can be, very large encompassing words. And you can start to notice where in your life maybe you're living in line with those values, and where in life you can improve. Maybe it's in your work, maybe it's in your relationships, maybe it's in your self-care strategies. So once you've identified values, you can then start making that intention of where you can start incorporating them. And then trying that out and seeing how that feels. And you can record it in a journal or just talk about it with people you love or feel comfortable with. A helpful way to tap into mindfulness is to do some guided visualizations. And you can download apps online. You can Google them on the internet, on YouTube. There's a bunch of, calming, mindful visualizations that help you just get out of your body and into a more relaxed state. A popular one that I like is called Leaves on a Stream. And it does have some nature imagery, so it's kind of fitting with our workshop theme. So I can guide us through it. So we can find a comfortable seat and just kind of tap into ourselves. So just take a deep breath in and then take a deep breath out. And we can just do that a couple times until we notice we're focusing on our breath. And if closing your eyes is uncomfortable, you can also just lower your gaze and fix your eyes on a spot somewhere in front of you. And so imagine that you're sitting by the side of a gently flowing stream. There are leaves flowing past on the surface of the stream. This can be a place that you know in your own life. It can be an imaginary stream, whatever brings you a sense of calm or peace. And you can imagine it however you like. It's your imagination. And now for the next few minutes, notice each of your thoughts as it pops into your head. And as one pops in, you can just place it on the leaf. Allow it to come and stay and go in its own good time. Don't try to make it float away, just notice what it does. It may float on by quickly, or it may go very slowly, or it may just hang around. Do this regardless of whether the thoughts are positive or negative, pleasurable or painful. Even if they're the most wonderful thoughts, just place it onto that leaf. And allow it to come and stay and go in its own good time. They may float by quickly or slowly, or they may hang around. Simply notice what happens without trying to alter it. And if your thoughts stop, you can just watch the stream. Sooner or later, your thoughts will start to open up again. You can allow the stream to flow at its own rate. Don't speed it up. You're not trying to wash the leaves away. You're allowing them to come and go in their own good time. And if your mind is saying, this is stupid, or I can't do it, just place that on the leaf as well. And if a leaf gets stuck, you can let it hang around. Don't force it to float away. And if a difficult feeling arises, such as boredom or impatience, just simply acknowledge it. You can say to yourself, here's a feeling of boredom, or here's a feeling of impatience. And then you can place that onto the leaf. And so from time to time, your thoughts will hook you, and they'll pull you out of this exercise. You can lose track of what you're doing. This is normal and natural, and it will keep happening. As soon as you realize it's happening, just gently acknowledge it, and you can start the exercise again. And whenever it feels right, you can start sitting up in your chair. Maybe start noticing some of the sounds in the room. Take a few more deep breaths and you can start to open your eyes. So welcome back. I think the usefulness of this exercise specifically is this sort of detachment that it gives us from some of our thoughts and feelings. It's just a kind of a muscle that we're practicing to observe and not get consumed. So it's a practice to push these feelings, good or bad, aside. We're not trying to push them away. We're just trying to hold them a little bit further away from ourselves. How was that for you, Marissa?
It was good. It was nice to kind of be more mindful in the present moment instead of just thinking about, a lot of different distractions of like what's happening 2 weeks from now, what's happening a month from now. Just like being aware in the present moment, not overthinking. It's just putting each thought on a leaf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done that one a lot, and I like that feeling of just putting something away, even though it's so distressing to me. Like, oh, I can just put that over there for a couple minutes and see how that feels. Notice the space that I have in my body. And when you open your eyes, it might come right back, but you have that few moments to just know what it feels like to really have that curiosity and non-judgmentalness. And that is kind of that feeling of mindfulness that we're talking so much about.
finished doing our mindful rock painting activity, and we kind of just wanted to show you what we did, so that way maybe it could inspire you for some ideas of what you may want to do for your rock painting activity. So for the first one, I did love. I put this on a rock. I did a white background so that way you can see the red a little bit better, which if you're having trouble with the paint, with like the colored paint, it might be easier to just do white first. And so I put love as one of my values, love for others, and then also making sure that I'm loving myself as well. I also did a little wise mind. It's a little like Venn diagram for the rational mind and the emotional mind, and making sure that I'm having a balance of both, and making sure that I'm not just reacting on my emotions and not just reacting, based on facts, and just making sure that I'm having, that I'm using both and using a balance of both. And then my last one is just like a little safe space. So my favorite place is the beach, and that's where I feel like I can be the most connected to nature and, to my ancestors. And it's just a really good place for me to be, especially when I'm feeling overwhelmed with emotions or really stressed out. It just always clears my mind and helps me be more present. So I just have a little ocean to remind me to either go to the beach or also just like imagine myself being at a beach when I'm feeling very overwhelmed.
And I just wrote a couple words that I identify as my values. So I wrote trust. It reminds me to have trust in myself and trust in kind of the process or life unfolding. Kind of gives me some patience with situations and confidence that I can handle hard things. And then I tried using a green background. You can decide how you like it. But I wrote growth. The color green always makes me think of nature and trees. So I just like to surround myself with that color. Growth is also just the mindset I want to always be in, constantly growing, opening my perspectives. So when things get challenging, I always try to assess, will this help me grow? Or will this kind of hold me back? And that sort of leads me in my directional path. So yeah, we encourage you to make these rocks meaningful to you, however they look. These are our examples, but you can get creative with them and just keep them around where you'll see them, maybe where you can hold them, or just keep them as a reminder that you do, have control over your experiences and the way you live your life. And I hope that some of these skills and concepts were helpful to you. Yeah.
Thanks for attending our workshop, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Okay, everyone. Hello, my name is Reed Althouse, and I'm an intern here at SCARE. I am also a student at San Diego State University. And yeah, thank you for listening today and watching. A little background about myself. I'm a tribal member from the Ipai Nation of Santa Isabel, and I was born and raised in Santee, California. I got my bachelor's in multicultural gender studies from CSU Chico up in Northern California, about an hour and a half away from Sacramento. And yeah, I look forward to working here with SCARE.
Hi, my name is Mackenzie Martin, and I usually go by Kens. I am a new social work intern at SCARE. I started here in August, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to be working within this community. I think SCARE is such an incredible organization. I love the work that they do, and I have just enjoyed every second of working with the different folks who I've already had the opportunity of meeting, and I'm so excited to meet more of you. So I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about myself, and I hope that through getting to know me a little bit, you might be more comfortable in talking with me if there's any way that I could ever support you. So I actually just moved to San Diego. I moved here from Chicago. I grew up in Illinois, and I got my undergraduate degree at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So back in my undergraduate, I studied human development and family studies with a concentration in child and adolescent development. Throughout my entire education, it's been really important to me to learn about children and families and the systems that impact them. And I'm really, really interested in looking at trauma and how trauma impacts our experience and how we can best serve those who have experienced or are experiencing trauma. And I'm also really interested in looking at how our systems, put folks at a disadvantage through discrimination and racism and other things that really oppress people, and how we can work to promote social justice and empower those people who have been disempowered throughout their lives. And so during my undergraduate career, I had the great pleasure of doing research in Jamaica. I worked within the Culture and Family Life Lab, and I was able to go to Jamaica and work with Jamaican mothers and their 7th graders. And I held focus group interviews with them, and we really just were able to sit down and have a conversation together about their perspective, what was important to them, and what they needed to feel, empowered and successful in their daily lives, specifically looking at how US culture was kind of changing and impacting the way that health and well-being are happening in Jamaica. It was just such an incredible experience, and I really appreciated the vulnerability and the openness to talking with me, especially as an outsider who is very new to their culture. And it was just a really eye-opening experience for me. So that was one of my best experiences in my undergraduate. And from there, I became really interested in continuing to work with new communities and learning from them, because they're the experts on their experience. And so after graduating, I ended up going and working within communities in Chicago. And so I most recently was working with children who had autism and their families, providing therapeutic services and really learning about what these children and families needed to work within society, given their differences. And I absolutely loved working with my kids and families, but I realized that I was a little limited in what I could provide for them. Given my current education, I felt like there were still barriers to what I was able to do for them. And I really wanted to keep growing and learning and to be able to serve people in the best way. And so I decided to move here to San Diego to start the Master's of Social Work program at San Diego State University. So now I'm here in San Diego. I'm in the Master's program, and SCARE is my first year internship. And then after I graduate with my master's, I am going to be working within the child welfare system. And it's really important to me that while working within that system that has been historically very unfair and unjust towards so many populations, and I know specifically with the Native community as well, that I am a very culturally humble and empowering social worker who can help families and children connect and ensure that the system is, being changed to be more fair and equitable and empowering for people. And so I'm really, really excited for my opportunity here at SCARE to work with you all within the community and learn from you and learn about what's most important to you, what services are most supportive, and how moving forward in my career, I can be the most culturally humble and empowering person. So thank you so much for taking the time to get to know me a little bit. And I really hope I have the opportunity of meeting with you all and sharing some space with you. So thank you. Have a great day.